I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of my office, the city sprawling beneath me like a chessboard, each building a pawn under my control. The hum of traffic below felt distant, irrelevant, because in this room, I was the king. My assistant, quietly hovering by the door, cleared her throat. "Sir, the board meeting starts in 15 minutes, she said, eyes flicking nervously toward me. "I know," I replied, not even turning. "Tell them I'll join late. I have more important matters." She hesitated. "Your wife called again this morning." I turned finally, smirking. "Ah, yes. My ever-loyal spouse, concerned about what I eat, what I wear, what I think. I swear, she thinks money can solve every problem." She said she wanted to discuss dinner plans. "Sir," she tried again, but I waved her off. "Dinner? Please. My schedule doesn't bend around etiquette. Or feelings. Or whatever she imagines I owe her emotionally." The assistant sighed, retreating quietly. I rubbed my hands together, smug. I had built this empire from nothing, and I had every right to enjoy its spoils without apology. Love, loyalty, they were transactional. Everything was transactional. The phone buzzed. A message from my fiancée. "Can't wait to see you tonight. The new restaurant is exclusive." I chuckled, staring at the screen. Yes, she was clever, charming, the kind of temptation that sharpened my ego rather than dulled it. Unlike my wife, who stood there calmly, pretending nothing mattered to her. I found her in the lounge, sipping tea with that serene patience I'd long taken for granted. "You're late," she said softly, eyes meeting mine. "I was busy," I replied, leaning casually against the counter. "You know, running an empire doesn't stop for niceties." Her lips twitched in a faint smile. "Of course. I forget sometimes how important control is to you." "Not forget," I said, "just prioritizing. You understand priorities, right? That's why you married me. Comfort. Stability. Everything else is secondary." She didn't flinch. Didn't argue. Just looked at me, calm, unwavering. And for a moment, I felt something I refused to name. "I suppose," she said lightly, "if I weren't comfortable, I wouldn't be here." I laughed. "Exactly. You're practical. I appreciate that. Some people get lost in ideals, but you understand logic." "Logic," she echoed, voice soft but steady. "And yet, logic doesn't always bring happiness, does it?" I frowned slightly. "Happiness is for children. Adults measure power, influence, and money. Those are what matter." She sipped her tea, eyes lowering. I had always mistaken her composure for weakness, her quiet for surrender. I was blind, utterly blind. My phone buzzed again. "Fiancé. Remember tonight. I have something special planned." I glanced at her. "Business dinner later. I might be busy." Her eyes flicked up, calm and composed, seeing right through my arrogance. "Of course. Go enjoy your special plans." I left the room, smirking at my reflection in the glass as I passed. Control. Power. Wealth. All mine. Yet a faint tension tugged at my mind, a whisper I ignored. In the elevator, I scrolled through messages from my fiancé, excitement practically dripping from each line. My ego thrived on attention, on desire, on the thrill of having options. And yet, in the back of my mind, a quiet question lingered. Could love exist outside of transactions? Ridiculous. Of course not. Love was a currency, loyalty a contract. My wife understood that. She had married wisely. The assistant met me at the boardroom door. "Sir, they are waiting," she said softly. "Tell them I'll grace them with my presence," I said, brushing past her with a confident smile. After all, they need a reminder of who runs this company. As I entered the room, colleagues nodded and whispered, impressed or fearful, I didn't care. Their reactions were predictable, a mirror of my control. My wife's quiet strength, my fiancé's tempting messages, the assistant's subtle warnings, they all blurred into the background. I was king. I believed that fully. Yet, somewhere, in a shadow I refused to acknowledge, a seed of doubt had planted itself. And I would not admit it. Not yet. The ballroom shimmered under golden chandeliers, the hum of conversation weaving with clinking glasses. I could feel the eyes on me, colleagues, clients, investors, all eager for a glimpse of my charm, my authority. And there she was, sitting beside me, calm as ever. My wife, serene, quietly attentive, while I was the center of attention. I leaned toward her with a smirk. "Honestly, do you enjoy this?" I whispered, loud enough for her to hear. The food, the wine, the luxury? You didn't earn any of this, yet you sit there comfortably, soaking it all in. She raised her eyes, unshaken. I enjoy the company more than the luxury, she replied softly. I laughed, sharp, condescending. Company? Really? You're married to me. You have a front row seat to power, money, influence. Don't act like it's about conversation. Perhaps you overestimate my motives, she said, calm but cutting. Or maybe you underestimate your own ego. A few nearby attendees glanced our way, intrigued by the tension. I ignored them. This was my stage, and I would control the narrative. You know, I said, voice low but firm, some people would kill for what you have. And yet, you sit there as if it's your right. It's not my right, she said evenly. It's our life. And I choose to live it with dignity, not arrogance. I leaned back, trying to mask the unease that stirred in my chest. Dignity? How dare she wield that calmly while I thundered? Later, alone in the lounge area, I passed by her on the phone. I caught fragments of her conversation. No, mother, she said quietly. I don't need money. I have enough, and I'm handling things myself. Please, don't interfere. I froze. My wife refusing money from her own family? My first thought, ridiculous. She's wealthy through me. She doesn't need to refuse anything. I dismissed it quickly, shaking my head. She's just being stubborn, I muttered under my breath, brushing off the disturbance. The phone buzzed in my pocket. Fiancé. You looked amazing tonight. Can't wait to see you later. I smiled, ego swelling. My wife's calm self-restraint was admirable, but this was validation. Real desire, real power. I was irresistible, untouchable. And she, my wife, was staying only because she needed me. Status, comfort, security, nothing more. At dinner again, I couldn't help teasing her in front of the group. Honestly, I said, raising my glass, I sometimes wonder if she even appreciates this lifestyle, or if she's just learned to enjoy it because she married wisely. A hush fell briefly. My wife's lips pressed together, eyes unwavering. I felt a twinge, like a small spark of warning, but I crushed it with a grin. Wise enough to live with me, I added, leaning in slightly, enjoying the tension. She finally spoke, calm, deliberate, and if I had nothing. The words hit harder than any insult or applause. The chatter around us faded. My mouth went dry. I wanted to retort, to reassure myself with pride, but no words came. If I had nothing, would you still love me? She repeated, soft but piercing, her eyes searching mine. I swallowed, blinking. The room felt suddenly claustrophobic, every gaze focused, every judgment palpable. My mind raced, but I wouldn't, answer. Fiancé's message vibrated again. Hurry. I have a surprise. I glanced at my wife, then at the phone. My heart didn't race, but my chest tightened. Control, ego, desire, they all demanded my attention. Yet her question lingered, sharp and unwelcome. I turned to the group, raising my glass with practiced confidence. To business, to success, I said, voice steady, hiding the tremor inside. My wife's gaze didn't leave me, calm and unwavering. I avoided her question, avoided the truth. But deep down, I felt the first crack in my certainty. And I hated that feeling. I sat across from the lawyer, the divorce papers spread before me like a declaration of freedom. My fiancé's laughter from the phone earlier still echoed in my ears. Finally, I would be free from the weight of a woman who had married me for comfort, not love. So, you understand everything? The lawyer asked, pen poised. Of course, I said, glancing at the papers without reading a single word. Let's get this over with. I have more important things to do than linger over someone who doesn't appreciate me. The lawyer nodded, a practiced smile masking curiosity. Very well. If you sign here, the divorce will be finalized. I grabbed the pen, my hand steady, my mind on the celebration ahead. Done. Across the table, she sat silently. My wife. Calm, composed. No tears, no begging, no pleading. I studied her face, expecting desperation, anger, or even shock. Nothing. Just a quiet dignity that unnerved me. Are you okay? I asked, smirking. She looked at me, almost pitying. I'm fine. Always have been. You, however. Don't get sentimental, I interrupted, standing. This is a clean break. I'm the one taking control here. She smiled faintly. Control is an illusion. I scoffed, brushing past her. Try telling that to someone who's winning. The lawyer cleared his throat. Everything is in order. Shall I file? Yes, file it, I said, already imagining the headlines. Powerful CEO ends marriage. Moves on. Later that evening, I moved into my fiancée's apartment. Her arms wrapped around me like a cloak of validation. Finally, she whispered, now it's all ours. Exactly, I said, pulling her closer. Freedom tastes good. We toasted with champagne, our laughter filling the room. I posted a photo online, announcing the separation. Comments flooded in, admiration, envy, congratulations. My empire, my ego, everything seemed untouchable. And yet, a hollow pit gnawed at me. I brushed it aside, pretending the emptiness didn't exist. My fiancée's seductive presence and my public triumph masked the first stirrings of unease. The next morning, I returned to our apartment to collect a few things. That's when I saw it, a small cardboard box, untouched, sitting by the door. I frowned. She left a box? Probably clothes. Or trinkets, I muttered, lifting it. Inside, I found photographs of us from years ago. Handwritten notes. Bills, unpaid medical statements I had never known existed. My fingers trembled slightly as I sifted through them. Each photo, each note, whispered truths I had ignored. She had carried burdens silently, protecting my pride while I tore apart her dignity. My mind raced, trying to rationalize it. It's just nostalgia, I told myself. Old memories. She's fine. But fine? No. She had given more than I realized, more than anyone could repay. I slammed the box shut, trying to silence the gnawing guilt. My phone buzzed again. Fiancé. Lunch? I want to celebrate your freedom. I typed back quickly, ignoring the box. Sure. Let's go. At the board meeting later, whispers circulated. The divorce, now public, had already reached the upper floors. The board member eyed me, subtle tension in his posture. You've made your decision, he said carefully during the break. Just, be aware of the ripple effect. I am aware, I replied, chest swelling with confidence. Everything is under control. Yet his expression lingered, a shadow over my triumph. Ripple effect? I ignored it, focusing instead on my fiancé, the champagne, the online adoration. Back at the apartment that night, I couldn't sleep. My gaze drifted to the corner where the box had been. I had shoved it aside, but it called to me, a quiet accusation. Why hadn't I seen it before? Why had I believed her calm was defeat, her silence weakness? The truth pressed against my chest, but I pushed it down, unwilling to confront it. Not yet. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, staring at my reflection. Control, I whispered. Power. Success. That's what matters. But somewhere, beneath the surface, the first seeds of regret had been planted. Not loud, not urgent, but insistent, patient. The box sat in my memory, untouched but undeniable. And I realized, for the first time, that winning might not feel as victorious as I had imagined. I had made a choice. A choice I thought freed me. And yet, the cost was already quietly accumulating, waiting for the moment I could no longer ignore it. Life with her was loud. Too loud. My fiancée thrived on spectacle, on attention, on making sure everyone knew I belonged to her now. She leaned back on the sofa one evening, swirling her wine, eyes glittering. Did you see her at that dinner? She asked, a sly smile on her lips. Your ex-wife, calm and small, while you dominated the room. I shrugged, trying to appear unconcerned. I didn't notice. And frankly, why should I? Why should you? She repeated, laughter dripping with amusement. Because she was there, breathing the same air, living in your shadow. It's almost sad, pathetic, really. I laughed along, though the edge of her words gnawed at me. Pathetic? No. She's practical. She made her choice. I made mine. Choices, she said, swirling her glass. Funny how some decisions lead to loneliness, even if you call it freedom. I brushed it off. Freedom felt sweet, even if hollow. That hollow would widen soon enough. At the office, the first signs came quietly. A former employee cornered me in the hallway. Sir, some contracts are slipping. Clients are uneasy. They mentioned loyalty concerns. I waved dismissively. I know what I'm doing. Everything is under control. But sir, there's resistance, he said, eyes nervous. Subtle, but growing. Even investors are talking, silent whispers, Questions about leadership. Silent investors, subtle resistance, I muttered under my breath. I faced worse. Still, the reports continued. Contracts fell through inexplicably. My assistant, who had always been my anchor, resigned without notice. I can't keep covering for decisions I don't understand, she said quietly. She left a note, some things can't be fixed with money or charm. I read it twice, scowling, then shoved it aside. She'll be back. They all will. Later that night, alone in the apartment, I tried calling my wife. Again and again. Voicemail. Silence. My heart thudded in a strange rhythm, not panic, not fear, but a tightening I couldn't name. Flashbacks came unbidden. Her voice, gentle but firm, during late nights of company crises. The quiet confidence she exuded when I doubted myself. The countless times she had rescued my pride while taking my failures privately. I remembered one evening, years ago, a board presentation gone wrong. She whispered, "You're stronger than this moment. Don't let anyone see you crumble." I had nodded, barely registering her sacrifice. Now, I recalled it vividly, feeling a sting of shame I refused to admit aloud. She had never asked for money. Not a single cent. During the divorce, I assumed she had walked away with some comfort, some quiet compensation for enduring me. But she hadn't. She left with nothing but dignity, and I had laughed, celebrated, moved on. I poured a glass of whiskey, staring at the empty apartment. Her absence was louder than my fiancé's endless chatter. Her silence had weight, substance. My fiancé's taunts, my empire's tremors, all paled against the quiet that had always held me steady. The phone buzzed. "Fiancé. Why are you so distant tonight?" I ignored it. For the first time, I didn't want validation, didn't want reassurance. I wanted the calm I had lost, the steady presence I had abandoned. Memories pressed in. Her laughter in the kitchen, the way she remembered every small detail about me. The quiet encouragement she gave when no one else believed in my vision. Every small act, unnoticed at the time, now burned into my memory. Even as I sipped the whiskey, my mind replayed her calm rejection of money from her family, the resilience that had always defined her. I realized that her silence wasn't weakness, it had always been strength. And yet, I had mistaken it for submission. The apartment felt smaller, louder. My fiancé's voice, mocking and insistent, clashed with the weight of memories and silence. I couldn't escape it, and for the first time, I understood the cost of ignoring the quiet truths. I set the glass down. My empire was trembling quietly. My control, once absolute, now felt tenuous. And in the stillness, I understood something I refused to acknowledge. She never took anything from me, not money, not attention, not pride. She had given everything and asked nothing in return. And I had lost it all without realizing what I held. I never expected to see those numbers. The financial records lay open on my desk, crisp, precise, irrefutable. My fingers trembled slightly as I scrolled through page after page. "What is this?" I muttered, voice low, eyes scanning entries. The auditor, an older man with a patient gaze, adjusted his glasses. "Sir, these are records of transactions dating back years. Unaccounted company debts, all covered by a private account in your wife's name." "What?" "That's impossible," I said, shaking my head. She wouldn't. I never asked her to." "Exactly," the auditor said gently. "It appears she acted independently, using personal funds to cover losses you may not have even noticed at the time." I sat back, the chair creaking. My mind reeled. Every celebration of my victories, every boast of triumph, some of it had been built on sacrifices I'd ignored, oblivious to the woman silently keeping me afloat. Where did this money come from? I asked, unable to mask the incredulity. The auditor handed me another folder. Property she sold. Inherited assets. All traced and verified. I exhaled sharply, feeling a cold pulse of unfamiliar emotion. Shame. Not regret, not yet. Just the bitter realization that I had misjudged her completely. Then, a knock at the door. My wife's brother entered, expression neutral, eyes calculating. "You've seen the records," he said, voice measured. "I have," I said, holding them up. "I don't understand, why?" He sighed, sitting across from me. "Why?" "Because she believed in you when no one else did. When the company was failing, she protected your name, your reputation. She took debts on herself so you could maintain pride in front of investors and employees." I stared at him. She did all that? Without telling me?" He nodded. "Yes. She never wanted credit. She just wanted you to succeed. I ran a hand over my face, heart hammering. My mind flashed back to every moment I had humiliated her, accused her of greed, dismissed her concerns. Every cutting remark, every accusation, it all collided now with this revelation. She covered my failures, I whispered, voice tight. While I destroyed her dignity. Exactly, he said. And you didn't even notice. She stayed silent because she loved you, or at least believed in the man you could become. You discarded loyalty for arrogance. I sank into the chair, stunned. The world around me felt thinner somehow, stripped bare. My fiancé's voice came to mind, the lies, the manipulation, the subtle undermining I had welcomed without question. Her silence, I muttered, wasn't weakness. It was strength. Yes, he said softly. And your fiancé, she was feeding the illusion, not the truth. You think she loves you, but she was using you, while she protected herself. I clenched the folders, feeling my chest tighten. I don't know what to say. I didn't lose a wife. I discarded loyalty. He leaned back, letting the words settle. It's not too late to recognize it. Just, don't make the same mistakes again. The auditor cleared his throat. Sir, I can provide a full breakdown of every transaction, every amount. If you want to reconcile what she did with the company's current status, it's all here. I nodded silently, though my hands still shook. Numbers, accounts, transactions, they didn't convey the human cost. The quiet, steady sacrifices she made while I celebrated victories that weren't entirely mine. I thought of the arguments I had had, the arrogance I flaunted. Every insult, every accusation, I had been blind to the truth standing right in front of me. She gave everything, I muttered, more to myself than to anyone else. Everything, and I thought she wanted money. My wife's brother gave me a look, one I will never forget. She wanted respect. Recognition. Honesty. Not wealth. She gave you the first two, and you refused to see it. I swallowed hard, shame burning across my chest. It wasn't regret yet, not completely. But it was awareness, a sharp, cutting awareness that made the air feel heavier than any argument I had ever had with her. I stared at the files again, at the proof of her sacrifices. My mind tried to reconcile years of arrogance with this sudden, undeniable truth. And I realized, in that instant, that the person I had lost wasn't a wife. She was loyalty itself, and I had thrown it away. I didn't cry. Not yet. But the weight of understanding pressed down in a way that nothing else ever had. I walked into the boardroom, my confidence like armor. Until I saw the faces. Cold. Calculating. Distrust simmering beneath polite nods. Sir, the board chair said, eyes sharp, voice clipped. We need an explanation regarding last week's leak. I raised an eyebrow. Leak? The internal financials, executive strategies, all made public, he said. Clients are questioning leadership. Investors are nervous. My stomach tightened. This wasn't me. I didn't authorize it. A media reporter leaned forward from the corner. CEO X, sources confirm your fiancé accessed sensitive company data. Care to comment? My head snapped toward her. My fiancé, smiling sweetly, poised like a predator. It's complicated, I stammered. She tilted her head. I only shared what you should have managed better, she said, eyes sparkling with mischief. I'm trying to help you, darling. The board exchanged glances, murmurs of disbelief and suspicion filling the room. I felt the walls closing in, my power slipping in real time. I tried to speak, to assert control. You don't understand, this was not intentional. I take full responsibility. A pause. Then the chair's voice, colder than steel, responsibility is more than words, sir. Trust has eroded. We expect action, proof, accountability. I nodded quickly, swallowing my pride. Outside, cameras clicked. Reporters scribbled, whispers echoing like knives. Karma had begun its slow, relentless burn. Desperation hit. My phone shook in my hand. I called her, my wife. Not as a husband, not as a man clinging to pride, but as someone drowning. Voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. Finally, I drove to her apartment. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. When she opened the door, she looked different. Stronger, healthier. Distant. Like someone who had weathered a storm I couldn't imagine. I need to talk, I said, voice unsteady. She studied me, calm, unreadable. You know why I didn't answer your calls? I do, I admitted, though it barely scratched the surface. But I need to say something. Her eyes softened slightly, but her posture remained firm. I stayed silent not because I was weak. I stayed silent because I was done explaining myself. The words hit like a punch. Done explaining herself. Every mistake I'd made, every arrogance, every humiliation, she had endured silently, not from weakness, but from choice. My voice faltered. I failed to see. I was blind. She shook her head. No. You don't get to rewrite the past now. You have to live with it. Learn from it, if you can. I swallowed hard, realizing she didn't need my apologies. She never had. My guilt, my shame, my desperate attempts to reclaim control, they were mine alone. She stepped aside. Go. Face what you've done. Face yourself. I wanted to argue, to beg, to demand she listen. But I stayed silent, letting her words settle. Her distance was a lesson I couldn't ignore. Back at my car, I sank into the seat. The city lights blurred through my windshield. My empire, once untouchable, was fragile. My fiancé's betrayal, my misjudgments, and my blindness had left me exposed. And yet, in that devastation, I felt something I hadn't in years: clarity. The illusion of control, the arrogance of power, the false security of wealth, it was gone. Stripped away by my own actions. I dialed her number one last time, letting it ring. I didn't leave a message. Silence felt more honest than words. The media continued their frenzy. Board members whispered, investors pulled back. Karma, slow but deliberate, was reshaping everything I had built. I lit a cigarette, inhaling sharply. Smoke curled around me, a small comfort in a world that no longer obeyed my commands. She had taught me, without saying it, that strength isn't loud. It isn't violent. It is quiet, deliberate, and patient. My fiancé had tried to control me through manipulation. My wife had controlled nothing, she had endured everything, silently. The boardroom, the press, the collapsing empire, it was all secondary. The first real understanding of my failures came from her, standing at my door, calm and resolute. I exhaled, feeling the weight of what I had lost, and what I had ignored. Power had slipped away. And in its place, a new awareness, fragile but undeniable, had taken root. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and tension. Cameras lined the back, journalists scribbling furiously, the public audience a silent jury. I stood at the center, hands shaking, heart pounding. Mr. X, the judge said, voice steady, impartial. You are here to address allegations against your company. How do you plead regarding misuse of information? I inhaled, knowing the answer wasn't simple. I could spin a story, blame her, protect myself, destroy her reputation to save my own skin. My fiancé would have wanted it. Your Honor, I began, voice quivering, I have something to confess. Something bigger than the charges here. The courtroom went still. Whispers ran through the audience. I could feel the weight of eyes on me, waiting, judging. I swallowed, mind racing. This is it. Do I choose power or truth? Ego or integrity? I was wrong, I continued, louder this time. I allowed arrogance and pride to blind me. I accused someone I loved of greed, betrayal, when in reality, I failed her, failed myself. Murmurs. Gasps. My fiancée shifted in her seat, eyes narrowing, lips pressed tight. I exposed confidential company information, I said, turning slightly to face the board, the reporters, the silent audience. But it wasn't by accident. My fiancé manipulated me, feeding my ego, creating chaos. I was complicit. I allowed lies and ambition to guide my actions. I cannot blame her alone. The judge raised an eyebrow, pen poised. Go on, Mr. X. I felt my chest tighten. Words came, trembling but truthful. I destroyed loyalty. I humiliated someone who only protected me. My empire, my image, everything I thought I controlled, it crumbled because I refused to see the truth standing right in front of me. I paused, scanning the public audience. Faces blurred, but the weight of judgment pressed in. I couldn't run from it, couldn't manipulate it, couldn't charm my way out. Not this time. I accuse no one but myself, I said, voice stronger now, steadier. I refuse to destroy another's reputation to preserve mine. I accept full responsibility for every mistake, every humiliation, every failure caused by my arrogance. A reporter whispered into a microphone, words carrying across the room. The CEO confesses publicly. My fiancé's eyes widened. You, she began, voice sharp. I held up a hand. No. This isn't about you. This is about truth. The judge nodded, scribbling notes. Very well, Mr. X. You acknowledge the consequences of your actions. Yes, I said. I accept whatever judgment is given. I will face the collapse, the criticism, the scrutiny. My conscience, finally matters more than my empire. The audience was silent now, leaning forward. Some faces showed surprise, others disbelief. I felt exposed, raw, but strangely free. My inner monologue ran wild. Integrity over ego. Truth over illusion. This is the man I must become. I continued. I want it to be known that my fiancée orchestrated manipulation for personal gain. Her charm, her deceit. I will not protect her lies any longer. A gasp ran through the courtroom. Cameras clicked rapidly. I could see my fiancé's shock morph into fury. Sir, the judge said, voice calm but firm, you understand that your admission may lead to complete restructuring of the company and legal consequences. I understand, I said. And I accept it. I would rather lose everything than continue living a lie. I choose truth. I choose responsibility. I choose to face the consequences of my cruelty and arrogance. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. The courtroom held its breath. My voice softened, almost a whisper, but every ear caught it. I humiliated a woman who loved me, who never asked for anything in return. I discarded loyalty for pride. I acknowledged this publicly, without excuse. The judge nodded, impressed with the clarity. Very well. The court acknowledges your confession. Proceedings will continue, but your acceptance of responsibility is noted. I stepped back, shoulders heavy yet relieved. The public audience whispered, some nodding, some shaking heads. Cameras flashed, immortalizing the moment. I exhaled, thinking not of my empire, not of wealth, not of control, but of the man I was becoming. Not a triumphant CEO, not a man shielded by power, but someone who faced himself honestly. For the first time in years, I felt a strange weight lift. The collapse would come, the consequences would sting, but I had chosen the harder path, truth, integrity, responsibility. And in that choice, I realized what real strength meant. Months had passed. My life had shrunk to quiet routines, no luxury, no applause, no celebrations. I walked streets that felt empty but honest, ate meals I prepared myself, and slept in a modest apartment that smelled faintly of old wood and paper. The news followed me anyway. Reports of my former fiancé's downfall filled the airwaves. Lawsuits, exposure of lies, public humiliations. I watched from a distance, neither celebrating nor gloating. Just observing. Calmer, slow but deliberate, moving at its own pace. She thought she could control everything, I muttered, lighting a cigarette on a cold balcony. Smoke twisted toward the gray sky. She didn't realize control is an illusion. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out letters I had written over the months. Pages upon pages addressed to my ex-wife, words I would never send. Dear her, I whispered aloud to the empty room. I see now. I was blind. I destroyed loyalty, dismissed devotion, and mistook silence for weakness. You deserved honesty, respect, and recognition. I offer none of that in reality, only these words. I folded the letter, placed it carefully in the drawer. Silence returned, heavier than ever. A knock at the door startled me. It's me, she said, voice calm, measured. I froze. My heart twisted, not from longing, but from shock. There she was, carrying the dignity that had always been her shield. Come in, I said, voice steadier than I felt. She stepped inside, scanning the modest apartment. It's different from before, she said quietly. I nodded, unsure what to say. I've changed. Not everything, but some things. Enough to understand. She smiled faintly, a gesture that hurt more than anger ever could. I see that now, she said, voice soft. Finally. I swallowed. I wanted to apologize, but I realize apologies aren't enough. You don't need them, and they don't fix what I broke. She shook her head. I didn't come for apologies. I came for closure. You seeing me, understanding, that's enough. You didn't need to send the letters, I could feel your awareness growing. Her words struck a chord, a melody of truth I couldn't have expected. I've watched her, I admitted, nodding toward my former fiancé. The chaos, the greed, the exposure. It's undeniable. And I feel neither joy nor satisfaction. Only understanding that what I allowed is part of the cost. She crossed the room, sitting near the window. Light caught her face, highlighting a strength I had ignored for years. She taught you a lot too, she said, voice soft but firm. About choices, about consequences. But not the way you think. She's spiraling because she never faced truth. You, finally, did. I laughed quietly, bitterly. Yes, but it came at such a cost. My empire, my pride, my illusions, all gone. And your conscience, she said. That's the part that matters. Everything else was a mask. I looked down, hands gripping the armrest. I wrote letters to you, even now. I never intended to send them. I wanted to confess to myself before you came. She leaned back, eyes thoughtful. I know. And it was enough. Seeing you, hearing you speak honestly, that closure is worth more than words in an envelope. Silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable but loaded. I felt the weight of years compressed into minutes. You've learned, she said finally. Not through lectures, not through confrontation, but through consequences. Through yourself. Yes, I whispered. I destroyed so much. But I see it now. Her expression softened, almost maternal in its compassion, but firm in its detachment. I can forgive, but not forget. Not for you. For me. And maybe for what's left of your awareness. I nodded, words failing me. The letters, the apologies, the regrets, they were all secondary to this moment of clarity. Thank you, she said softly. For finally seeing me. Not as someone beneath you, not as a possession, not as a shadow in your life, but as a person with truth, loyalty, and strength. That recognition, it's everything. The words cut through me, sharper than any insult I had ever hurled or endured. Not hatred, not anger, but truth, exposing my failures, my arrogance, my blindness. I exhaled slowly, smoke curling around the room. I don't deserve you, I said quietly. But I understand. And that, maybe, is enough for both of us. She nodded once, then rose. Goodbye, she said. And she left. The door closed, leaving me alone with my conscience, my smoke, my quiet apartment. No applause, no recognition, no empire. Only awareness, hard-earned and undeniable. Karma had not rushed. It had moved deliberately, teaching lessons in silence, patience, and truth. And for the first time, I felt ready to live, not to reclaim power, but to rebuild myself honestly. The morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, warm but not indulgent. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring silence rather than luxury. The apartment smelled faintly of toast and the faint scent of old books. Life had shrunk, but in a way, it felt expansive. I noticed things I'd ignored before, the rhythm of neighbors' footsteps, the laughter of children in the courtyard, the calm hum of a city that moved without my control. Morning, Mrs. Patel, my neighbor, called from her balcony. Morning, I replied, raising a hand. Her smile was simple, genuine, unaffected by money or status. A contrast I couldn't help but notice. I set my mug down and glanced at my phone. There was a message from a former colleague, offering me a contract I could have easily turned into profit. I stared at it. Money, power, recognition, the old temptations. My fingers hovered, then I deleted it. Better to build slowly than to reclaim ruins, I muttered aloud to myself. I walked to my desk and pulled out a small notebook, a journal I'd started months ago. Page after page, I'd written reflections, letters I'd never sent, confessions I had never voiced. The words now felt lighter, unburdened. I forgive myself, I wrote, but I do not forget. My sins shaped me, and my losses teach me more than victories ever could. The phone rang. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won. It was my assistant from years ago, calling out of habit or concern. You've been quiet, he said, voice cautious. Are you okay? Yes, I said. I'm learning. Slowly. There was silence on the line, then he chuckled softly. That sounds like you. Always learning, rarely resting. I suppose, I replied. Rest comes differently now. Not from conquest or celebration, but from honesty. Facing myself. Later, while walking down the street, I encountered a minor incident, a man attempting to bribe me for insider information. He smirked, expecting compliance. Sorry, I said, firmly. Not interested.
Are you sure?
This could make you rich again, he pressed.
I'm sure, I said, stepping back.
Riches without integrity are empty. His smirk faltered, replaced with confusion. I walked away, noticing how freeing it felt. Power could be tempting, but it was no longer my measure of worth. Returning home, I sat on the balcony and watched the city breathe. The sun reflected off glass towers, a reminder of the world I had once ruled. And I ruled it with arrogance, blind ambition, and ignorance of love's true value. I smiled faintly, not with pride, but understanding. I lost her, I whispered to the wind. Not for lack of trying, but for lack of vision. I deserved the loss, perhaps even more than I deserved pain. Yet, there was no bitterness. Only acceptance. Only awareness. Only the slow, deliberate shaping of a man who had once believed wealth equaled love and respect. A knock at the door startled me. A child from the building handed me a small envelope, shyly smiling. "For you," the child said. I opened it. Inside was a simple drawing, a sketch of a tree, strong and upright, roots visible, branches reaching skyward. No words, just art.
I laughed softly. "I see it," I said.
Strength, patience, growth. Later, as evening fell, I reflected on the letters I had never sent to my ex-wife. I had carried them for months, silent confessions, admissions of guilt, praise of her dignity, and recognition of my flaws. Sending them felt unnecessary now. The act of writing had been enough. Closure didn't need validation, only acknowledgement. I heard footsteps from the corridor, a neighbor returning from work. "Evening," he said, carrying groceries. "Evening," I replied. He smiled, casual, content. No status, no judgment. Just normal life. For the first time, normal felt luxurious. I returned to my desk and scribbled one final thought in my journal for the night. I didn't win her back. I didn't reclaim the empire or the illusion of control. But I reclaimed myself. The man I was before was flawed, blind, arrogant. The man I am becoming, self-aware, honest, and free. A memory surfaced, my fiancée, trying to sway me with charm and greed, expecting obedience. I remembered the bribe today. I smiled faintly, firm but calm. Not today. Not ever again. I glanced at the horizon. Lights twinkled in buildings I once coveted. The world was unchanged, yet I was. "This is the man I became," I wrote, closing the notebook. Not for recognition. Not for power. But for truth, integrity, and awareness. And that is enough. The night settled. I sat on the balcony, coffee gone cold, notebook closed, and finally, I felt a peace that had eluded me for years. No fanfare, no applause, no empire. Only a man, honest with himself, living quietly, witnessing life, and understanding it fully. I raised my eyes to the stars, whispered to the empty sky, "I forgive myself. And now, I begin again."